Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Frankie's Open Mic. I'm your host, Haleigh Overseth of Frankie's Podcast Network, and I am excited to be joined by Gregary Burnsen-Hicks. Hello, Gregary. Thank you for joining us today.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to chat with you. So, Gregary, you've got your own PR business, GregaryStars.com. Folks, it's in the description below. Go check it out. Click on Gregary's link and see what he does. But for the folks at home, give us an introduction to you and what you do.
So, thank you for that kind introduction. I'm Gregary Burnsen-Hicks. I am a British entrepreneur, self-made entrepreneur. Started my journey when I was 12 years old and always realised that this is what I wanted to do, and then kept hustling up ever since, and then started my own talent and PR business where I represented someone off a reality TV programme in the UK, and then started doing PR for CEOs and founders. And it just kind of went from there, really.
I love it. I know we talked just a little bit, before the show about your start at 12 years old. So, can you get into that just a little bit more? Because for a lot of people, that probably sounds like, oh, wow, what? You started at 12? That's pretty wild.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% it is wild. I think it's wild in the best way. I think with that early start, it has definitely given me an advantage in many ways, because many don't start their entrepreneurial journey until their 20s, but I kind of was already started before my 20s, if that makes sense. So I picked up a lot of things in advance before it was kind of full steam ahead, really. And when I started at 12 years old, I went door knocking, door to door, selling homeware items, seasonal items. Local people got to know who I was and what I was about, and they really warmed to my energy and everything. So then, they bought from me, and I'd sell all sorts of things like flowers, homewares that make their kind of business, their home more seasonal, all that kind of thing. And I was always very into buying items cheap and selling them at a higher markup. And it was a good little business to start at 12 years old. I think if you can kind of think of something and not overthink it and just go for it when you're young, it definitely really sets you up in so many ways. It's not just the business side, but also in the confidence building, and going door to door speaking to people means that you've actually got someone in front of you. Really does help with communication building and all that kind of thing. I think being able to hold a conversation with someone and sell yourself and sell your products to them, I think is a really good skill to have.
It absolutely is. And when you start that young, so can you maybe tell us a little bit about sort of what your were your parents supportive of you doing this? Is this something that you just said, I'm going to go do? Not everyone has that kind of opportunity, or parents who would necessarily support them in going out and doing that kind of a thing. It's maybe more common now, right, than it used to be. But can you maybe talk a little bit about just, that kind of did you have that kind of support, or what was it that made you want to go out and do that?
Yeah. So I think it was just kind of like wanting to do my own thing on my own terms, and kind of not wanting to go down traditional routes, and just kind of wanting to do things on my own terms, really. And my mom would take me to local shopping centres with different shops, and I would just go and pick things, and then I'd put them into my basket, and I'd make my own little catalogue, and then I would just basically sell those items. And whenever I kind of went shopping and saw something I liked, I would just get that item and sell it at a slightly higher price, because of the convenience of providing it door to door and all that kind of thing. And it worked really well. So I'd buy an item for like £1 and I'd sell it for like £4, if that makes sense. So, and most people are willing to pay that if they like you, and then they like the product. They don't think twice about how much you've paid for it. And basically I then realised that I was doing well from it in ways that I didn't immediately anticipate at the start. And then I looked at wholesale, buying items in bulk, and I bought a big box of items, an assortment of lots of different items from a wholesale business. So I went from going to shops and buying items to then going to a wholesaler and getting loads of different assortments of like loads of little flowers in bulk and all sorts of things really. And then that's how I was able to go a little bit further with it. And then when my studies with school kind of got in the way of things a bit and me growing and evolving as a person and I got older, I just naturally drifted away from it and then ended up going on to do other things. So I don't do that now, of course, but it was a good starting point. And I believe that a lot of entrepreneurs have a lot of really good stories of how they started little things, little side projects and stuff when they were younger, around their studies and around going to school, because they always had that spark within them. So obviously they had to put that spark to the test. And that was a way that I was able to do that. And I even sold things in school. I sold lollipops in school, tried to make money in school. The teachers didn't have a problem with it, to be honest. They knew it was always in me. And yeah, they knew that I was a born entrepreneur and that I was going to go on to do something big in the world. I just don't think they knew immediately what that would be at that age, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, when I had that same sort of thing when I was a kid, I, made like friendship bracelets that I would sell at like my mom would have, garage sales and things like that, and I would sell friendship bracelets that I made. So like I've had that. I think it is something that's born in you, right? That you just have
Yeah,
something else that you want to do that's not in line with what you're told is available, right? And
yeah.
I'm sure that does play into your starting your own businesses and the entrepreneurial things that you do, right? So how did you sort of roll into this PR stuff? I mean, obviously, if you're going door to door, you kind of learn to sell yourself, right? And sell, again, that communication style and the personability and the relationship building skills that you developed. How did you shift yourself then into this more of the PR role from those things?
Yeah, well, I think once an entrepreneur, always an entrepreneur. And I think just like any good entrepreneur, I think you naturally move on to new adventures. And when I was around 13, 14, I got the chance to go to a creative agency in London, and they worked in the advertising sector, and they got me some media coverage. And that was my first set of media coverage as a founder. And then I later on realised that I could do exactly what they did for me, but for me, do it for founders, CEOs. And then I naturally became a talent agent for CEOs and founders, because I realised that actors and influencers and TV personalities have them. However, entrepreneurs and founders often don't. So I found a gap in the market to represent CEOs and thought leaders and those types of people that are influential in their own way, but don't have a talent agent and don't have any exposure or any PR. And 9 times out of 10, they've already earned the exposure. They just don't have anyone doing it for them. They don't have the PR tail chaser chasing after the coverage and securing the coverage. And I'm able to secure the coverage because I have PR relationships with media outlets that allows me to. So I get like PR credits and business arrangements that allow me to basically provide that guaranteed coverage, which gives me a competitive edge as a PR manager. So it's not just trying to get free coverage. It's when you go with the right PR manager, they will have the connections and the contacts and their paid business arrangements that allow them to guarantee coverage because they've got arrangements that involve that, if that makes sense.
Well, it's not just I mean, we from some of the prior conversation that we've had, I think a lot of it also comes from your energy, right? And that's kind
Yeah,
of what you said before with the door-to-door sales, right? People appreciated your energy, so they wanted to buy from you. And I imagine the same kind of thing applies here. So
Yeah,
can you maybe go into a little bit, because we had this conversation before about sort of mindset and energy and kind of asking for what you want, even if
yeah.
it's not being offered. Can you kind of get into that a little bit and how you blend your particular energy and your mindset capacities into what you do?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is not what you know, but who you know. I know a lot of early founders that are trying to grow their business by not knowing anybody. And I think that's a very difficult thing to do. I think if you want to get anywhere in the world, I think you need to know people and you need to know the right people in your niche. Same, it could be anything, basketball, podcasting,
Hmm.
entrepreneurship. You've got to know people in those circles that believe in you and like what you're doing in order to grow and expand further. So absolutely, a lot of it is who you know and putting yourself in the right rooms, putting yourself in the right circles, mingling around with the right people, feeling the room. That's definitely a big thing. A lot of events are free to attend, so there's really no excuses. Really, the only thing you're really going to pay for is getting there, like getting a taxi or going on the coach or train. But the event itself, many events are actually free to attend. So just find free events to go to, apply to go to them, and turn up and just network with people, approach people. I think when I went to my first networking event, it was nice actually what I remember from it, because I raised a question and then that's when people approached me after that because they saw me asking a question. So they saw like early confidence in me, and then they then started having conversations with me, and then I went to another networking event after that and started to see the same people again, and then they start introducing you to other people, and then it starts to just be a ripple effect then before sort of everybody knows you. So I think a lot of it is consistency, knowing the right people, putting yourself in the right rooms, definitely having something different about you that stands out in a room full of people. I think authenticity is important, just being yourself, showing up as yourself every day, and yeah, just being you. And I think that's a really beautiful thing, just being you, and people really feel that and buy into that when you're 100% real and you're just yourself. And I think that's always what I've always been about. And I think personality has got me a long way. I think people do business with those that they like and those that they want to work with and those that they want to do business with. So if they generally like you as a person, and if you're going to make their life easier or do something that they don't want to do or can't do or don't know how to do, then they will work with you. So I've always been about just trying everything, never giving up, not taking no for an answer. There's no such thing as a no, because the next person could say yes. So it's just a redirection. If that person says no, just move on to the next person that could say yes. And you often don't know what's around the corner. You don't know how quickly things can change in an amazing way, and how you might get a no today, but then you might get a yes tomorrow. So you've always got to have that element of hope in you, even if things are looking bleak and things are looking messy and difficult. I think you've always got to have a percentage of positivity in you that allows you to believe that tomorrow will be better than today.
That's something that I think a lot of people probably do struggle with, being able to, and I really do appreciate your energy again and your mindset on these things of maintaining not just a positive energy, but like a belief in yourself, right? Like that confidence in yourself that just because one person says no doesn't mean that there's some like it's not a judgment on you that they say no. They're just not the right person to work with, or it's not the right time for them, or whatever it is. So when it comes to challenges like that, and I know we talked a little bit again about how you recently have faced a challenge like that, can you kind of talk a little bit about how you maintain that confidence and that positivity, even when you do have big changes or big uncertainties, that come up as you're doing business, because that is a thing that will happen.
Yeah, 100%. I think something I've learned is holding on to past success that I've already attained, and just remember that if I can do that, then I can do anything. And I think it's absolutely nice to remember what you've done before. So if you lose a client, you'll gain another one. That kind of mentality, really. And like when one door closes, another door will open. And that I always believe that if you've done it before, you'll do it again, and you'll do it again better, bigger, stronger than before, because the lesson is always in the experience, and without the experience, you don't have the lesson. So some things are to just be experienced, and it's okay if things look messy, because you learn in that messiness. And especially when you're only young and you're in your early 20s, you're learning about lots of different things. You're experiencing lots of things for the first time. So, of course, you know, things are going to be difficult sometimes, but then you'll look back and be happy that it went the way it did, because you needed that challenge and you needed that life experience to move you, propel you forward. And without that, then you probably wouldn't be appearing on podcasts or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like it's little 1% that add up in time.
I I mean, I think that is such a really great perspective that you have. And I don't think it's necessarily a common perspective, and you probably experience this quite a bit, right? That as humans, we have a sort of conditioning to look at what doesn't work. We're conditioned to find the problem instead of look for solutions. We're conditioned to tally up the losses and the things that are the costs to you of doing something, rather than looking at the experience and the journey and appreciating what you did take from it. Do you like, where do you suppose that comes from for you? Like, is that something that you've just always had naturally in you? Are there things that you've experienced or any particular things in life that you might point to that have kind of given you, or even mentors or things like that that have given you that kind of perspective where you do look at the hopeful things, or you do look for what is still available?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm an old soul on young shoulders. I've surrounded myself by mentors. I think mentors make really great friends, and the vast majority of my friends, my closest friends, are mentors. So, yeah, absolutely. I think mentors are a real good one. I feel like my spark has always been there, but it's been the right people that have been able to believe in me and bring it out of me, if that makes sense. And it's like a plant, really. I'm wearing like a green shirt today. I'm kind of like a plant, really, and you've got to keep watering it, but you've got to keep watering it with the right nutrients. And I think the right nutrients are mentors and positive affirmations, positive influences. Forget all the rubbish in the world and just focus on the good things. And I think, like, getting a magnifying glass and just looking for the smallest things sometimes. I believe that you have to sometimes lose things to gain things, and that you've never really lost anything, because a lot of things are external. Like, for example, I know someone that ran out of money to renew their web domains, and that there was someone that had another challenge and another challenge, but that's not the actual value. The value is from you showing up as yourself. I am the value. Everything else is just an add-on. It's just an extension of me, but it's not actually me, if that makes sense. So I don't have to renew myself once a year. I don't have to pay. I don't have to pay to owe yourself. Do you know what I mean? You are you and you are yourself. So you are your own product, if that makes sense. So no one can ever take you away from the equation, because you are that thing. And I think if you really own something, then you won't have to renew it once a year, if that makes sense. So I think the term business owner, I don't really agree with the term business owner, because I don't really believe that you own anything as a business owner. A lot of it is actually on loan to you. You rent a lot of things. A lot of things are, monthly subscriptions, yearly renewals. It's all on loan for you, as long as you keep pumping money into it. But apart from that, you don't really own anything. There's always someone who's got the upper hand somewhere, if that makes sense. So, but what you do own is yourself, and you own your thoughts, and you own your personality, and there's no one else in the world who's 100% like you. So that is definitely a reason to take yourself into the white rooms and to take yourself out your comfort zone. And yeah, if you want to be comfortable, then you've got to be uncomfortable sometimes. I think I'd rather have challenges in the early years of my career to unlock a lifetime of freedom versus the other way around, if that makes sense, because I believe that it's easier when you're younger to take challenges and more risks when you're younger than later on in the life when you might have more responsibilities, a family, lots of other things. Whereas when you're younger, you don't mind as much taking a bit of a risk because you think, well, you're only like in your early 20s anyway, so if it doesn't work, who cares? Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think when you're like in your 30s or 40s or 50s, the sort of the sort of belief around that might look different, if that makes sense. So I do think when you're younger, you can make and take more challenges, if that makes sense, and take more risks and just be bold and gold and just have a go. And if it doesn't work, you've learned something from it that you can take into something that will work. There's always something that's going to work out. Do you know what I mean? You just don't know what. But yeah, there's hundreds of different opportunities out there. Over 1 billion people in the world. You know what I mean? There's always something somewhere. You've just got to be clever about it and strategic about it and just try lots of different things until something fits and until something works. And I think you have to do a lot of experimentation before something clicks. And then when that clicks, then you've got to, again, keep working at it, if that makes sense.
I love that you say I don't have to renew myself every year. Like I appreciate that mindset of like I always have me, I always own me. Like
Yeah,
I'm the best asset that I'm ever gonna have, right?
yeah, yeah,
And that
exactly.
that that amount of self-value, I think, is like regardless of what age you are, like that's what gives you the confidence, the capacity to take a risk and to, just to experiment and to try. And maybe you
100%.
can kind of to talk to me about this just a little bit, because like some of what you're saying too is that you're very willing to take a risk and have it not work out, right? And a lot of people call that failure, like you're willing to fail kind of thing, right? But I'd like to hear your take on it because I imagine that failure is not necessarily something in your vocabulary. It doesn't sound like. It sounds like you probably have a much different way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as failure because it's just the experience. Who sets that it's a fail? Do you know what I mean? Like what an exam adjudicator or whatever. There's not anyone that's actually saying that's right or that's wrong. I think you've just got to just experiment, and I think you've got to plan to fail, not plan to succeed, and then you'll end up succeeding. So I just kind of think don't over evaluate or overthink things and just go for it and not really think anything of it, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think the word failure gets thrown around quite a lot. However, I do feel that that is quite a negative term. So just don't even think anything of it. Just give it a go. If you want to make something, make something. If you want to do something, do something. Just don't even think anything of it. Just go for it, to be honest. And then if it doesn't work out, well then it didn't work out. As simple as that. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I think there's many things that probably won't work out versus what will work out. But again, you wouldn't have got to the thing that did work out if it wasn't for the many things that came before it that didn't work out.
I always think of Thomas Edison, how he says, I didn't fail 1,000 times to invent the light bulb. I just found 1,000 ways how not to make a light bulb,
Yeah,
right?
it's true. Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it's also like I have my own website but I'm probably not going to have my own website forever, but I'm always going to have myself forever. You're always going to be with yourself forever. So I think you've really got to love yourself, enjoy yourself, and just be you in every way, and don't worry about failing. Don't worry about succeeding. Just kind of let the vocabulary go out the window and just be more human. And I feel through a lot of my challenges, I've often been stripped back, where I've become a very pure human, where there's been nothing but just me, if that makes sense. And I think that really puts the human element in me. I've been able to see both sides of the coin between, I know what it's like to succeed, and I know what it's like to struggle. So I think it's really good to see both sides of the coin and know what it's like to not have money and know what it's like to have money. I think money is like sand. I believe that sometimes you can build a sand castle with it, and sometimes it just becomes wet sand, if that makes sense. It's certainly not the goal, but I do believe that it's a tool that can help you in many ways. Like, it will buy you your coach ticket, it will buy you your train ticket, but there's no guarantee that it will always be there. So again, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. You'll always have yourself when you have nothing at all.
I think I really do appreciate that perspective and that energy you have. I think it's a really beautiful thing to see when it's not a common thing, right? I don't think that it is. We live in a world that is constantly telling us how to learn to love ourselves and how to get to this place of exactly what you're talking about, having that trust and confidence in yourself and having an appreciation for yourself, that like I'm always going to be here for me, right?
Yeah,
And I think it's a really beautiful thing that you are in that and exude that energy to people, which probably really does contribute a lot to your ability to build relationships with people in the PR industry and just in general in life. I really do think I think it's a thought process that a lot of people are trying to find their way to get to, right?
mm,
In this
yeah.
world that you just innately have. And can you maybe talk a little bit about, because all these things you're saying, it's very clear that you don't place judgment on yourself or on circumstances, right? You don't have that, this is really good and this is really bad sort of
Yeah,
way of looking at
true.
the world,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
I mean, can you kind of expand on that a little bit? Because again, we live in such a world of focus on duality and focus on, black and white, yin and yang. Whereas
yeah.
it seems like for you, it's all just it really is the experience. I'm a human here having an experience, and I'm not going to judge what my experience is. Like, can you talk a little bit about just that mindset and how do you stay on that even keel for yourself?
Yeah, it's true. I could have a yellow piece of paper and a white piece of paper saying the same thing, and I'd still read what's on it. What I mean by that is I'm not bothered by what's behind what it says on the thing. It says the same thing. It's just a different backdrop, or it's a different. It's the thing is the same. What it says is the same. It's just what's on it is different. So just don't look at what's different, and just look at what is, if that makes sense. Look at what is working, because there's always going to be something somewhere that is working. I think you just have to really strip a lot of things back and just look at the very small little dots sometimes. And a lot of things are free, a lot of platforms are free. So always just utilize the free things. I think a lot of monthly things, a lot of subscriptions can really eat your business up in many ways. And especially when you're not always making money. So it's difficult when you've still got those things on the table and you've got no money coming in. So that's why I think you just don't really care much about the external things, if that makes sense, because they'll always sort of be there. They'll always come and go, if that makes sense. So I just kind of focus internally and don't focus as much externally at the moment. Someone actually said to me, "Oh, you've got to meet the founders page on your website, but it doesn't actually say anything about you." And I said, well, it doesn't need to, because I am the real deal. You already know who I am, so I don't actually need a Meet the Founders page. It's intentionally, well, I couldn't be bothered to put anything on it that on that day. So I just ended up leaving it blank. And I thought, you know what, just leave it blank now, because it's like the whole metaphor is that I don't need to explain myself for myself to be known, for myself to be valuable, for people to want to speak to me and work with me and collaborate with me. I don't need to Meet the Founders page for that. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I'm not building an empire. I am the empire.
I love that. That's brilliant. I think that there's just so few people who would be comfortable with just why do I need to have that on there just because people say so. And I do really appreciate that you have that, that just because something is a convention or something is expected doesn't necessarily mean that it has all the value that people say it does. Right. So,
Yeah,
and maybe you can talk a little bit about that because again, I so appreciate just the entirety of your energy around this. It's something that
oh,
is very refreshing. Like I really
oh,
do. It's not a common thing when a lot of times you feel like the things that people say when it comes to this confidence and self-love and whatever is a little bit lip service, right? It's a
yeah,
little bit that they don't really believe that they had to convince themselves of it, right? With like those positive affirmations and things like that. But for you, it's
yeah.
something that you really do genuinely believe in, and that comes out when you communicate. And so I know we were going to talk about this. I wanted to make sure that we get there. So maybe a little left turn, but if you could talk about, because again, in this area of like not judging yourself, like you have recently had some business shifts that have happened that you're navigating, right? Are you willing to kind of talk about that and just maybe get into your perspective on that just a little bit?
I am, yes. So at the end of March, I lost my main PR retainer client, no fault of my own. It was just out of changes in their business and changes in their business direction and changes in their budget that unfortunately meant that my time with them had came to an end. So although I wasn't employed by them, but I freelanced to them, it was something that I really enjoyed, and I was doing PR for them, getting them featured. I got them featured in a variety of media. They were very, very happy with my work. They found it exceptional, actually, and they definitely saw the value in working with me. However, their budget just didn't allow for that to continue any further. So, of course, that's left me in a difficult position, because in many ways I was sort of banking on that income being there for the rest of the year. So now it's not there now, and it's only what, April, May? No, it's May. So yeah,
Mhm.
so May. So yeah, I think I've really had to become even more human recently, because I've had to really, well, you know what? I've learned a lot actually from losing the client. It's not the first time that something like this has happened. I just believe like you learn a lot more things when you just lose things sometimes. I feel like you become more pure when you just sort of just lose. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I just feel like I feel a shift in myself. Although, yeah, the money might not be there, but it's not all about money, is it? Do you know what I mean? I think I felt something different in me in a good way from losing the client. I think it's allowed me to think differently. Do you know what I mean? I think it's allowed me to sit with myself and really reflect more deeply on, is this sustainable? What needs to change? What am I going to do? What am I going to do about it? How am I going to change my approach? All these different things. I feel like it's very easy to get comfortable when the money is flowing in very nicely into your bank account once a month. And I think it's very easy to just sort of stop pushing yourself when you see that money coming in, because you think, oh, it's here now. I don't really need to do anything now. I just enjoy it. Do you know what I mean? And keep doing good PR. And I think I kind of, when that stopped, I kind of had to sort of put my rethink hat back on, because it's
Mhm.
like that period of that financial freedom kind of rent for a bit from that client. So it kind of allowed me to think how I wasn't thinking when I had that client, if that makes sense. And I don't think that you would think in that way until you're forced to.
Well, it's a little bit that sort of complacency thing, right? Like when you become complacent, things sort of stagnate to a certain degree, right? Like I think I'm not sure who the quote is, but it's that necessity is the mother of invention, right? Like if you didn't have this shift occur that a lot of people would freak out about and see as a negative thing and kind of panic about
Yeah,
it, instead of panicking, you see it as an opportunity to take stock in the sense of observing, okay, what other opportunities are here now that like maybe the universe is trying to redirect me a little bit. Maybe there's
yeah,
something bigger and different for me available that I'm not quite seeing yet. Like, what is that? And I think that again, I so appreciate that this is your perspective. And I think it's something that's so needed for people because, again, we're so trained to, I mean, look at just the media, right? Stock market shifts downward and everybody has to go into a panic about it. Everybody has to go on red alert as soon as something is like not flowing in the way that you want it to, right? But I really do appreciate that you look again where you say the external things are always going to come and go, right? But the internal is what matters. Do
yeah.
you have, I mean, what, again, it's a little bit sort of fascinating to me, if you don't mind my saying, that like even as someone who is a younger person, that you kind of have been able to skirt that sort of human training, that like indoctrination into the sort of like hustle culture, freak out and panic when it's not good, and when it is good, force yourself to push yourself further this way. Like, can you talk a bit about like that? I mean, do you meditate? Do you what's your secret to being able to keep that sort of internal voice being on a positive scale and that self-love instead of an inner critic that's always looking for the things that are going wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think it's basically trying to be as peaceful as possible. I haven't got time for people that are just going to talk rubbish. And yeah, just do you know what I mean? I feel like you just need to be surrounded by the right influences. I think if you surround, you are the six of every five people that you surround yourself with. So if you surround yourself by five millionaires, you'll be the six. If you surround yourself by five anything, you'll always be the six. So you're always the six of the five people that you surround yourself with. And I do believe that is absolutely true. I've had some of the best phone calls in the past couple of weeks, people trying to boost me up, lift me up, trying to say, Gregory, come on, you've lost this client, but you need to keep going, you need to keep pushing. You're up there as one of the top creators on LinkedIn, so you need to keep going. And I think just those people having those kind of conversations with me, those people that I probably wouldn't have talked to otherwise if I wasn't really forced to from losing the client. So I think sometimes it's sometimes one of the best things that could ever happen to you actually. Just sort of letting go and just sort of losing things to gain things. Sometimes I think a lot of people, they try and hold on to as many things like collector's items. I think they try and collect everything and keep everything for themselves and retain as much as they can and not lose as much as you can. And I think it needs to, in many ways, be the opposite. I think you need to be okay with just letting go, losing things, not really bothering if you lose anything or whatever. I think it's about being more free and not being anchored to so many external things that will always have a control over you in some way and will always kind of suck life out of you and suck blood out of you and suck peace and happiness out of you, and just sort of don't let them take away your peace. Let them have whatever their thing is, but don't ever let them take away your peace. And I think if it takes away your peace, if it costs you your peace, then it's honestly not worth it. And it really isn't. Do you know what I mean? If it costs you your peace, then it's too expensive, is what I say.
I love that. I think that's brilliant. And again, I think it's something that people say but don't necessarily live by. So it's again very refreshing to talk to someone who does actually live by it and exudes that energy of if it's, my internal peace is more important to me than whatever external perceptions of me I might be concerned about, right? And so I imagine you probably don't concern yourself a lot with that kind of external perception, right? Like letting people tell you how you should be, how you should think, what you should worry about, that sort of a thing.
Absolutely, it's all BS at the end of the day. A lot of people will try and throw their two pennies worth into the mix, but you'll always be the golden coin. So just sort of like not let anyone sort of distract you from where you're going, and just stay in your own lane and just focus on that. And if you need to take a break at any point at any time, always take a break. I think it's good just to get out, have a walk, you get out of your room or your office. I feel like entrepreneurship or most things can be quite isolating. And
Mhm.
actually, I've had an amazing week this week when I've just sort of stopped messaging people, stopped really doing anything, stopped really pushing things to happen, and just gone out this week, had a look around places, just had a nice week doing nothing really. And I think that's a good way to be. I think a lot of people are busy doing stuff that doesn't really matter, if that makes sense. I think if we just kind of became more pure, more human. And I kind of feel like, when people say, "Oh, what are you doing this weekend?" It always kind of bugs me, because I'm kind of like nothing really. Do you know what I mean? I always fill my diary with nothing really, because it's like, why do we need to fill our diary up with so much rubbish, with so many things that don't matter? I think so many people, they're so busy, like every 5 minutes. There was someone that was supposed to be speaking to me back in March, and they keep messaging me and they keep saying, "Oh, next week I'll speak to you. Oh, next week I'll speak to you. Oh, 2 weeks later I'll speak to you. Oh, mother," I was like, "Oh, you know what? Forget it, because you're never going to speak to me, are you? Do you know what I mean?" So it's like,
Mhm.
so if you want to speak to me, like, speak to me. But if you're just gonna be like, "I haven't got time because I haven't
Mhm.
got time to even put a glass of water on my table," then you need to take a lot of things off your priorities list, off your calendar, because a lot of those things don't even matter. If you can't even take a phone call right now, then what have you got on in your calendar that is wasting your own time, let alone anyone else's? If that makes sense.
No, I think I absolutely agree with that. I mean, we don't spend nearly enough time just allowing ourselves to be as human. We're human beings, not human doings, is what I always
Mm,
say, right? And sometimes I think a lot of us do sort of start to value ourselves based on productivity, how much you're getting done or how much you seem to have to do, right?
yeah,
And so it becomes something where you think that if it makes you sort of feel always behind, but unable to let go of those things. And you're right, it is just a lot of extra fluff and distractions and things that you don't actually need, because you
yeah,
should just get back to being human and being with yourself. So like I do again
absolutely.
really. Mhm.
Absolutely. I am a minimalist. I'm very minimal in a lot of things. Like, for example, I'll put like one sentence on a thing. I won't really fill the calendar with anything. Like, not really. Do you know what I mean? I'll just sort of be very minimal where I can be. It's like, I just sort of like to just rock and roll and not have anything that is in the way, if that makes sense. Like you said, a lot of things are just unnecessary, and a lot of things are just added noise, if that makes sense. And I
I
just like I said earlier, a lot of people just trying to put their pennies worth into the mix when it really doesn't matter. So yeah, I just think just being more at peace with yourself, and actually less is more. And I've believed I've achieved more success by doing very little.
I agree with that, and I think it really demonstrates the value of just being present in the moment and in the flow. I think get so caught up with like planning ahead and having a plan and having things laid out ahead of you, even though very often those things don't go the way you plan and they don't
No,
happen that
no.
way. So it doesn't matter anyway, right? So why worry yourself with it? So and that is again I think where a lot of people are trying to get to. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that? So for people who are sort of trying to get to the space you're i- in in just the sense of like I'm working on it and I'm trying, you're still believing that you're not there. It's still the story that you're telling yourself that you're not there yet, right? So like how do you frame that for yourself? Not sort of telling yourself you need to be different than you are right now in the moment.
I think for myself, I've always been qualified. I've never been to university, and I honestly don't mind saying that. And in a way, I think it's done me the world of good. And I see a lot of people, especially on their LinkedIn bios, saying aspiring to be this, aspiring to be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, well, you're either an entrepreneur or you're not. You're not aspiring to be an entrepreneur. You are an entrepreneur, if that makes sense. So why are you putting a label to aspiring to be that? You're either that or you're not. So if you are an entrepreneur, you're an entrepreneur. You're not aspiring to be an entrepreneur, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
I do find that quite interesting. And I know people who have ended up removing the part aspiring to be because they
Mhm.
now believe within themselves that they were that all along.
Because you are what you say you are, right? And because it's like you say, it's not the external and it's not how other people label you, it's what you say you are that really matters. And people will take on what you say you are. I do want to kind of go back because this is something that came up for me before. If you can kind of like in the realm of sort of challenges and who you surround yourself with. So if you're in a situation in business where you are maybe say working with someone who's sort of not fitting into that frequency of yours, right? Like you're working with like people around you that have a sort of maybe like resistant sort of energy to what you're doing. How do you sort of shift yourself when there are people in that circle that you kind of stop and take stock and say, okay, maybe this is not the kind of energy I want to surround myself with. I think I need to shift. Like, how do you handle a situation like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good one because I've experienced a lot of jealous people and a lot of people who have been quite triggered by me, and a lot of people who have said that I'm magnetic, but in real life, they have found that their insecurities have kind of been triggered by my magnetic energy. And I had that in January actually when I went to London to meet someone, and they were quite triggered by how magnetic I was. And about a week before, they were telling me how magnetic I was and everything. And then I gave them the opportunity to meet me in real life. And my magnetic energy, I think they struggled with because of their insecurities. So they were trying to one up me on everything. And I actually took a brochure that had me in from a talk I did last year, and I didn't realise that it was a signed one that I'd signed. I just found it and took it on the day that I knew I was going to meet her. And yeah, so anyway, I took it and then I showed it her, and I said, oh, I didn't know that I'd signed that. But anyway, you might want to keep it because it'd be worth a lot of money in the future. And yeah, and she ended up keeping it. So she must agree that it is going to be worth something because she'd have given it me back otherwise, and she never did. So then she then said, oh, mine will be worth a lot of money too as well. And I was just kind of thinking to myself, it was like constant, like, I've done it better, or I'm doing that as well, or my autograph is also going to be worth as much as yours, or more than yours, or the same as yours. And she threw it on the side and was very dismissive in a big luxury mansion in London and everything. And it was all sort of like, the marble flooring and everything. So it was kind of like, it's each to their own, isn't it? But I just think, yeah, some people just can't handle realness and magnetic energy. And, you know, it's one of those things, if you're too much for them, then, you know, you're never too much or too little for the right people. So just focus on people that accept you for who you are and love you for who you are and generally enjoy speaking to you, and those are your tribe. There's always going to be someone that's going to be like, oh, you can't do that, or you're not supposed to be doing that, or I don't like how you're doing it, or, you know, you're a bit young, aren't you, or all that rubbish. But none of that matters. You know, it goes on, are you good at the job? Have you got something about you? I mean, you could have, and I actually believe this is very true. You could have a, you could have a 31-year-old who's a boy, and then you could have a 21-year-old who's a man. It's got nothing to do with age. It's to do with how mature are they, what wisdom have they got, what have they got going on in their life, what are they doing to transform themselves. You've got to have something about you. Do you know what I mean? And I think that comes from, what are you doing now, if that makes sense? That's going to get people to think this guy's got something because he's got stuff going on, if that makes sense. So when you are busy and you're generally busy doing the right things, then it garners the right attention, if that makes sense, and it gets you onto the right platforms because people agree with what you're saying and they like what you're saying. And I'm quite unfiltered, so I'm like no nonsense and just say it as it is. So I always show up as that. I always have been that. And yeah, I just I don't agree with people sort of trying to dilute your energy or whatever. I just think you should just bring as much energy as you like, bring as little or as much energy as you'd like, and just be how you want to be and be how you want the world to see you.
That authenticity, right? It comes down to just being the real you that you are, and the people who don't like it aren't meant for you, and the people who do, that's who you hang out with and keep around. And just having that stability and, again, confidence in yourself to say, I am the value, and the people who don't see that or try to dim my light or try to, tell me I'm not doing something the right way, well, then I'm not supposed to work with you, because the people who see my value and want to work with me and want to keep going and want to be my cheerleader, those are the people I belong around, right?
Exactly. And
And
the reason why they have to dim your light is because they know you're right. They know that you are the value. They know you're going places, so they have to try and put something there that's to try and bring you down, because they know that, gosh, you're going places. So they think, well, what can we do to try and sort of put him off from the trajectory that we know he's on, if that makes sense. So I think it's always a little bit of a clue. It's always a bit of a hidden message. When people treat you like that, it just tells you that you're on the right track, because they wouldn't treat you like that otherwise. So they treat you like that because they know that you're on the right track, but they're just they're just a bit humiliated with themselves, that they know that you've got that it factor, or they know that you're doing really well, and it just sort of infuriates them for those reasons. So it's like a backhanded compliment, really.
Yep. No, and again, it's about the people that you surround yourself who are uplifting you. Like, if that's the kind of person you want to be, and that's the kind of people that you hang out with, those are the people who are going to appreciate your light and want to put it more out into the world and support it, rather
Yeah,
than try to tear you down, right? And again, I really appreciate that you have that easygoing nature about you, that, well, if someone is trying to do that, it's because I'm doing the right thing, and I'm not going to try to fight fire with fire and tear them down. I'm just going to exit myself of the situation and know that someone else will fill that space that is more appropriate for me to do so. And there's a lot of trust that you have in yourself and in life and in just the nature of existing as this human that we are, right? That I really think is probably one of the biggest reasons why I appreciate your energy so much, because this human experience is about the experience. It's not about how much you can take with you when you go. It's about enjoying yourself, following that highest joy, and being around the people that you really love to be around, and not really worrying yourself about the rest of it, because what can you do about the rest of it anyway, right?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I feel like sometimes you've just got to just let it unfold, let it happen, and just let it go to pot sometimes and see what happens. Just have a little bit of fun with things going wrong. Sometimes there's no such thing as anything going wrong. It's just, that's just how it's going, if that makes sense. So that's how I like to look at it. And yeah, just sort of don't be afraid to lose anything. And I actually think it's good to lose things, because you'll always gain it back bucket loads in the future. It will always come back to you. And if not that in the same way, it will always be something better, or it will come back in ways that you didn't immediately expect it to. But sometimes you just have to move things out the way to make way for new things. It's kind of like when diggers have to move wobble and lots of things out the way, because they're moving that for something better that they know is on the way for them to construct. So they have to make way for that new construction. So you have to just kind of like see yourself as like a construction in progress, if that makes sense. And like, remember that the digger is always digging.
The digger is always digging, and it's all right to let that rubble just go and put it in, like mow it over, let it go. I love it. Gregary Burnsen-Hicks, you have just been such a pleasure to speak to. I am so glad that we connected on LinkedIn and you came to join for a podcast. I can't wait to have you on more podcasts. This has been so much fun. But I do
Yeah.
want to let people know, like, so we've got gregorystars.com is your website. Is there anything else that you want to direct folks to check you out? Any of your socials or places that you want people to go look for you?
Yeah, you can look for me at Gregary Stars and at Gregary Burnsen-Hicks on LinkedIn. My name is spelt with an A as well, so it's Greg, A for Apple, RYSTARS.com. And yeah, Gregary Burnsen-Hicks, Gregory with an A for LinkedIn. So yeah, have a look there. Gregary Burnsen-Hicks on LinkedIn, gregorystars.com. Reach out to me, connect with me, see what I'm about. Hopefully you learn a lot from today's podcast. So yeah, thank you all for listening, and hopefully you find more value from the work that I'm doing.
I love it. I found a lot of value in this conversation because I just really appreciate your energy and your perspective and how very willing to be present in all of this human experience you are, with such a positive attitude and a positive light. So I say good for you for hanging on to that and believing in yourself. I really do appreciate this. And I think a lot of people do. Again, I think it's the kind of voice that a lot of people need to hear. So I'm happy that you were able to join us here on Franki's Open Mic. Thanks so much, everyone else, for listening. Whenever it is that you find this podcast, do check out Gregary in the links below. Like he said, go connect with him on LinkedIn for sure. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on Franki's Podcast Network. Thank you all so much for joining us. Gregary, thank you again for that. I am definitely going to have you back again.
Thank you. I'll be back. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. And until next time, have a great one.